Welcome to the Panic Room, where we talk about all things panic-inducing. I am the Queen of Panic. Warning, some episodes may contain content that may be disturbing to others. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let the games begin.
So I want to preface this by saying this is a true story, and the events I'm going to describe happened on a couple different occasions. A friend and I had been driving home from shopping when she started to feel sick. Now it was nighttime at this point, and dark, and we're on a rural, poorly lit highway, still about 45 minutes from home. But she had started to get really nauseous and asked if we could pull over, so I did. I pulled over at the nearest turnout, which happened to be next to a huge field with a small house in the distance. Now I'm shitting myself the second I pull over because I've seen enough horror movies to be paranoid about these kinds of places. But she bails out of the car and starts walking towards the field, heaving. I'm sitting there, kinda looking around and keeping my eye on her, when she asks me for a bag for the rest of the car ride home. I oblige and get out of the car, going to the trunk and start to dump out one of the grocery bags. Now what's weird here is there should have been a lot more noise. Yes, it's dark and there aren't many passing cars, but there are no dogs barking, no crickets, nothing. I finish with the grocery bag and I'm just standing at the trunk watching her. She's in front of the field. There's also a shallow ditch in front of her, full of water, which I remember being odd, because it hadn't rained in a while. There was also an orchard to her left. I remember her looking down at the water, then yelling to me.
Did you hear that? We need to go! Like, now!
We both bolt back to the car, lock the doors, and drive off. What she heard was a loud shriek, a cry, and it was getting closer and closer to us. We had both felt something watching us too, but never saw anything. A few nights later, completely different place, we were having a bonfire. It was me, her and her sister outside by the bonfire. Now it's summer, and we're talking 12 to 1 o'clock. We were all having a good time, laughing, joking around, and listening to music and dancing, when all of a sudden, the vibe just kinda changed. We all got uneasy. My friend and her sister looked at each other, and we were like,
Do you feel that?
and if we all got the sense we were being watched. We ran back to the house so fast. We then talked about when we got there, how maybe it was the same thing she heard that night at the field. She was worried it had followed us home somehow. That's when she tells her sister about the sound she heard it make. Her sister's eyes got wide, and she begins to tell her about the other night when she also had heard a noise like that. She said it was so loud it woke her and her dad up. She thought it was a baby crying or wailing or an animal and wrote it off. We're not really sure what it was. I just know that I've never felt that uneasy before. It was a scary feeling. She thought I wouldn't believe her when she began telling me, but I do. It's crazy and unexplainable, but I swear to God that there was something out there those nights. It can't be a coincidence either, can it? That 2 separate nights at completely different locations that they heard this thing. My friend was also worried, because it seems that this thing keeps getting closer and closer. Let me know if you've had any encounters like this, or heard anything that you think sounds like what I've described. This happened in California, in the mountains.
Back in the summer of 2020, I was traveling with my partner to Boise, Idaho, from Colorado to visit his family and stay for a camping trip. This trek is nearly 15 hours long, and while you can do it in a day, it's better if you stop to rest. Having lived in Utah at one point in time, I was very eager to show him the natural hot springs in Spanish Fork. They are located deep in Diamond Fork Canyon and require a 45-minute hike from the parking lot. Still, we were both excited to get out and moving after 7 hours in the car. When we arrived at the first parking lot, however, the gate was shut and locked tight. A sign taped to the metal read,
"Closed. Absolutely no access to hot springs. Fines $2,000 max."
or something to that nature. We were bummed. COVID had shut down many things, and we figured that this was outside, so there was no way it was going to be closed. After some research on the government website, we discovered that a body had been found in the springs and was likely the cause for the locked gate. Sad and tired of sitting in the car, we drove back down to the canyon road to find a spot to camp for the night. Most of the more established campsites were closed due to COVID or were already taken for the night. This was fine, since we prefer more dispersed camping anyway. So we picked a random road to turn on as we drove closer to exiting the canyon. Road 338. Most of the road was a well-kept dirt road. We passed some promising spots near a creek, and maybe 2 or 3 other people already setting up for the night. We wanted to go a little further to see if there was anything with that wow factor. Sounds funny, but some sites give off that "this is the one" feeling. Finally, we came to a dead end in the main road with a fire mitigation road to the right. At this very spot, there was a strange boulder with some type of inscription on it, partially surrounded by a wooden fence. I had to investigate. The description read,
Diamond Battle, June 20th, 1866.
No way! A memorial for a battle that happened right here? A feeling of uneasiness and, oddly, respect washed over me. After traveling up the fire road and not finding what we were hoping for in a campsite, we decided to pick a spot by the small creek we passed on the way in. It was getting dark quickly, but we set up our tent in no time at all and got a fire going. The creek was loud but peaceful, though ever since I read that inscription, I couldn't shake this strange feeling. I'm not a paranoid person, but I kept feeling on the edge of my seat, like something was watching us from the woods just across the water. As the night grew darker, this feeling grew stronger. I decided I didn't want to be in the open anymore, and retreated to the tent to get some rest while my partner stayed up to enjoy the fire. I snuggled into our sleeping bag and exhaled comfortably, listening to the creek that was now much quieter and was a bit further from the tent. I started to drift off when I heard it. Soft chanting. Rhythmic drums. My eyes shot open. Was I really hearing that? I strained my ears to listen over the running water. I couldn't quite get a clear sound, but it was definitely there. This is when I noticed the ground was also rumbling, as if horses were stampeding down the road, 100 feet from our site. I didn't know if I should get out of my tent to tell my partner, but I had the strange feeling that if I said it out loud, it would make it more true, and that an army of spirits would spring from the trees and into our campsite. Before I could make the decision, I was dead asleep. This was somehow the most peaceful slumber I had ever had. The next morning, we packed up our tent and left no trace that we had ever spent the night by Little Diamond Creek. When I finally entered cell service, I did a Google search of that memorial and Diamond Fork, Utah. It turns out there was a battle there between the Utes and the Mormon militia, and lives were lost on that mountainside. After reading this, I decided to tell my partner what I heard last night before falling asleep. I told him about the chanting and the drumming and even the stomping of horses. He looked at me in disbelief and said he heard the exact same thing. I guess I was only in the tent 10 minutes before he got spooked standing alone by the fire, hearing this distant chanting and drums. He came into the tent and experienced the same peaceful sleep I had. I feel as though we were being watched over by those Native Americans that lost their lives there. A strong but calm and protective presence. If you're ever on Diamond Forked Road, I hope you visit and pay respects to the memorial of the Diamond Battle, and maybe the spirits of the land will watch over you, too.
I was with two of my friends that night when it happened. I was driving them home because I was the only one who didn't drink at the party we attended early in the evening. We were on the road when my friend Alex felt sick, so I decided to park the car for a few minutes on the side road and wait for him to get better. I remember it was a clear night because of the full moon high in the sky. The landscape was beautiful. The beach was close to the road, and I could see it perfectly. To the dark gray sand, the bright sea, and the big boulder in the middle not far from the shore. But something strange was on it, so I got closer. At first I was startled, because who in their right mind could sleep on a boulder, half immersed in the cold water of winter, at 3 a.m? That's where things got weird. The thing looked like a woman at first, but instead of legs, she had a strong tail covered in scales with what it looked like a shark fin on top of her back. Her skin was gray, but with the night, so was everything else around me. She seemed to sleep with her head resting on her forearms. In the panic, I shouted to my other friend, Myra, to put the headlight of the car on because I wanted to see it better, and when I looked in front of me again, so was the thing. God, I could never forget it. She was staring at me, her bottom half lying on the boulder while she was standing on her webbed hands, which ended up with big claws. Her hair was moving with the wind, but they were weird, like snakes, but it wasn't really snakes. I don't know how to describe it. She had 2 big white eyes with no pupils at all, or eyebrows, and instead of a nose, she had 6 slits in both sides of her face, and her mouth was very small, thin, and with no lips. I was so frightened by her eyes staring at me, I couldn't move a single bone in my body. Then I heard my friends run to me, and before they arrived, she turned on her tail and disappeared into the sea with a loud splash and waves all around, and just like that, she was gone. All this happened in seconds, but it was an eternity for me. My friends didn't see anything, and I was too shocked to tell them. To this day, they still don't know what happened to me, and I didn't tell anybody either. Nobody would have believed me, and I can't blame them. If this would have happened to somebody else, I would never have believed them either. And frankly, I didn't want to be called crazy. Sometimes I wonder if indeed I'm not crazy. But then one day, several months after that night, I saw on TV that a diver was scared to death on the same area. Doctors said that he must have seen something really scary. I don't think it's a coincidence. Now I know that I saw a real mermaid, and it was not the pretty mermaid Hollywood wants us to believe in. I don't know if she was good or not. I was just so scared. Humans are scared of the unknown, and this proved to be true. Since then, I'm scared of swimming. I live on an island, so of course there is sea all around, but I don't go in there. I'm still scared, and I don't ever want to see her again. I never return to that beach because I know what's in there, and you would be scared to death too if you ever met that thing in the water.
Shared this post several years ago to several different subs, and decided to repost to get new insight or answer any new questions. A lot of people refer to this phenomenon as the Glimmerman show. I still don't know what to think, though I am leaning toward an interdimensional being of some sort. Let me know what you think. I just copy and pasted my old post. Would like to start by saying that I am new to Reddit, and this is my first post, so please bear with me if I'm not doing this right. This story I'm about to share is actually why I joined Reddit on my quest to find out if this has happened to anyone else. This is 100% true, and it's really hard for me to share because anytime I've tried to tell someone about it, I get laughed at and accused of trying to pull their leg. I recently seen an article about a woman who was hunting and seen an invisible cloaked creature that she described as almost like a predator from the movie of the same name. I read her story and seen the picture she took of said predator. Now, as for her picture, I personally think it's a combination of flare from the sun and a close-up of possibly her face or something. I'm not dismissing her story, though. Actually, quite the opposite, since I too have encountered something similar, and is what prompted me to seek out if anyone else has encountered a predator in the woods. Now, on to my encounter. When I was about 5 years old, I was playing by the edge of the woods behind my grandmother's house. I played there often, and my grandma just kept an eye on me from the kitchen or living room because the house had huge windows that faced the forest. She would come out every once in a while just to see what I was up to. I was obsessed with digging in the dirt and collecting unusual rocks and arrowheads that littered the land where my grandmother lived. I should mention this is Midwest Illinois, not far from Cahokia Mounds, so finding arrowheads was actually not that uncommon. Anyway, that day, I remember picking out a spot to dig. I had been out there for quite a while, because I remember I had a pretty decent sized hole going, when something caught my eye up in the tree that I was next to. I almost don't know how to explain it, but it looked like almost a heat wave coming off the branch of the tree. It was fall. I remember this because I had my pink jacket on, and remember thinking that my mom was going to be pissed because I had dirt around the bottom of the arms from digging. I also remember there was a lot of leaves on the ground. Anyway, I'm staring at this heat wave and realize it was a human shape. So here I am, 5 years old, and wondering why there was an invisible man in the tree. I remember feeling scared, but unsure what to do. Then it started moving and making a faint clicking sound. That was about the time that I decided that it was not supposed to be seeing this, and I hightailed it back to the house. My grandmother seen that I was pretty shaken, and I remember telling her that I just seen an angel. In my 5-year-old mind, I didn't know what else it could be. I had never heard of aliens or ghosts or monsters, so to me it had to be an angel because that's all my little mind could think of. Fast forward to when I'm about 12 years old. By this time the encounter was way out of mind. I loved watching action and sci-fi movies. My dad rented a movie called Predator. I am watching it with him, and the first time you see the predator invisible, cloaked, I about shit my pants. All the memories from that day digging in the dirt came flooding back. I even asked my dad if Predator was real or if he knew anyone or any animal that had cloaking ability that I didn't know about. He told me it was all fake. It wasn't like it was today, where I could just Google it. I had no access to the internet, so again, I just put it out of my mind. Again, fast forward to about the year 2004. I am grown. I have 3 small children. I just went through a separation from my husband. I moved to the next town over to an apartment with my kids. These apartments are all 1-level duplexes, with there being about 5 buildings. I am at the very last apartment of the last building. The apartments are considered in town, but are on the outskirts. There is a deep ditch that runs behind the buildings, with a chain link fence that separates the backyard from the ditch. There are about 6 to 7 trees on our side of the fence. If you follow the ditch a little bit, you hit a small forest that eventually leads to the country with a larger forest and farmland. I am a smoker, but would not smoke in the apartment because of the kids, so I often went out to the back porch. One night, I was up late doing laundry and stuff after the kids went to bed. I decided to take a smoke break before I myself went to sleep. I am back there on the porch, and I started hearing this faint clicking sound. I immediately looked to the ditch because I had seen a groundhog there a few days before, and thought perhaps he was out there again. The yard is faintly lit from the outside light that is by the playground, that is to the right of my back porch. I didn't turn on my porch light. I didn't normally, if I was just going out for a quick smoke. I didn't see any groundhog or movement from the ditch, so I go back to smoking my cigarette. The faint clicking sound keeps happening, and a slight shift of movement makes me look up to the tree to the left of my porch. It's there. The same invisible thing I had seen when I was 5. It is like a distortion and in a humanoid shape. It is crouched down on the branch with an arm out holding onto the trunk of the tree. I couldn't believe it. I was like, is this happening? Has it come to kill me from me seeing it all those years ago? All I could think about was my kids in the apartment sleeping. I ran in and slammed and locked the door. I ran to the kids' rooms and made sure all the windows are locked. Then I just turn out the lights in the living room and stare out the blinds at the tree to see if I could catch another glimpse of it. I sat there for about a good 10 minutes and couldn't see anything. I began to think that I'm just tired and my mind was playing tricks on me. Just as I was finally talking myself down, my neighbor's dog comes running across the yard and starts barking up at the tree at the same branch that I had seen this predator thing. That pretty much freaked me out because this dog was not a barker. I actually had never heard him bark at anything, even at the groundhog that had been hanging out in the ditch. This barking went on for a few minutes until I hear the neighbor lady who owns the dog call him back inside. The dog reluctantly turned back to go home, stopping every few feet to look back at the branch of the tree until he was out of my sight. I didn't sleep that night, and have never seen anything like it again. I don't know what to think of it. I'm a grown woman. I have kids and a good career. I just want to know if anyone else has ever had an experience like this. I know what I saw, believe it or not. Thanks for taking the time to read this. I'm sorry I'm on a mobile phone, so I hope that the formatting on this isn't horrible.
I've posted on here before about something that happened a few years ago. Long story short, I was walking my dog at night when I saw in the forest, lit up by the orange street lamps, what looked like a deer standing up. But when I looked at its head, I couldn't understand its face. As in, its head and face was sort of shrouded in darkness, as if my mind couldn't comprehend what it was seeing. Strange, but explainable. Last night, years after that encounter, nothing strange had happened up to now. I was sleeping, my bedroom situated facing the road, with my windows open. I am normally a deep sleeper, but I woke up to the loud sound of bird noises. At first I thought nothing of it, simply birds calling in the middle of the night. But over time, I noticed something. It's hard to describe, but it sounded as if every 5 seconds or so there would be a different bird call. And the calls weren't different sounds, as in certain birds make different pitch noises or hoot, etc. Instead, it was the same whistling noise. Not like a whistle blowing, but instead like the noise a songbird would sing, but in different arrangements, for an hour straight. It was very loud, loud enough that I covered my head with 2 pillows and was still awoken. It was just repeating the same 50 different calls or so, in the same order. It was as if one type of bird was imitating the different calls it heard over and over in the same order. The noise was about 25 feet away, coming from the thicket next to my house. There was no sound but the calling noise. No crickets chirped, no frogs called. Hell, no cars drove through the neighborhood. I also faintly remember the smell of rotten eggs, but this may have been a trick my panic mind played on me. Eventually it stopped, and I fell back asleep, terrified. I had kept my eyes tight shut. I woke up again about 15 minutes later, hearing the sound seemingly further away, down the street, but again in the exact same order. Then, later through the night, I heard the noise again, either in the same spot as before, and louder, or right outside my window. I faced away from the window and kept my eyes shut, horrified, but in such a tired state that I simply stayed put, not able to think of anything else. What the fuck was that? Does anyone have an explanation for this? I know my description may sound strange, but it's hard to put in words. All I know for sure was that it was not natural. This wasn't a bird, or crickets, or a frog. No, it was something else. Edit. Nah, I was wrong on that last part. After checking out a few links and watching a few videos, I think it was a mockingbird. I've never heard or seen one before, and it was pretty scary hearing its noises right outside for hours and having absolutely no idea what was making those noises. I'm happy now that I know I can keep a window open overnight. I guess this goes to show that a lot of things on this subreddit have rational explanations to them. It's important that we criticize and try to explain stories here so that we can find what is truly irrational and come to an answer about these things.
This was about 5 years ago. Me, my mom, and my dad were camping at Mary Jane Thurston State Park, just outside of Grand Rapids, Ohio. It was around the end of August, the beginning of September. Our campsite was in the front part of the campgrounds. Leading up to the two separate incidents, we occasionally heard what we thought could have been a bird or some kind of screaming or screeching up in the trees, or at least it sounded like it was coming from on top of the trees. We'd hear it almost every night, but in a different location. We'd hear it in the trees behind us one night, and then the next night it would come from the other end of the campgrounds. Then the night after, we'd hear it across the road. I've listened to the sounds of different animals, including owls, to see if that was the noise we heard, but nothing is even close. Occasionally, we heard what sounded like branches being snapped, but thought nothing of it. I had my own tent, and that detail is somewhat important, as it factors into the second incident. First incident. My dad woke up in the middle of the night to what sounded like someone rummaging through the ice chest, which was sitting between our tents. He said he then heard whoever or whatever it was shut the cooler and walk away. He told me and my mom about it the next day. The odd thing was that nothing was missing from the cooler. Second incident happened the night after the first one. I had a little small TV and my game console in my tent. I was watching a movie when I hear something approach our campsite. Whatever it is went through the cooler again. I could hear the ice moving around as it was rummaging through the cooler. I was as still and as quiet as possible, but whoever or whatever it was knew I was awake because it decided to put its massive hand on the side of my tent and push it. I was frozen with fear and didn't know what to do. It felt like forever, but was only about 20 seconds before it took its hand from my tent and walked away. I didn't even think about looking for tracks the next day. We don't have bears in this part of Ohio, so I definitely know it wasn't a bear. This thing didn't take anything from the ice chest, despite going through it twice. I know when it put its hand on the tent and pushed it a little, I was frozen with fear. We know it wasn't some homeless person or anyone else because there was maybe 5 campsites that had anyone, and they were in the back part of the campground. If you have any stories that you would like to see narrated here on the channel, please go into the subreddit and submit them there. The link is in the description. Also, we do have a Discord now. Thank you so much to Creepy Clown Girl for putting it together for us. You can come hang out with me and other narrators and get the party started, get spooky with us. That link is also in the description as well. And last but certainly not least, I wanted to introduce the King of Panic. We have a lot of brand new content coming soon with him in it. He is very talented. He does not have his own channel. He just kind of wants to be a part of this. So if you would like to hear from him once you start and you like his voice, stay tuned here. And as always, thank you for visiting the Panic Room. You have successfully made it to the next portion of your tour. Please stay tuned for your next prompt. Click the like button and subscribe to receive notifications for when the next portion of your tour is ready to join. Thank you for watching. Don't let the panic drown you.